Okay, hello everyone, everybody. Welcome to our roundtable. This roundtable is entitled "Re-evaluating Russia's influence in Armenia-Azerbaijan dispute." And Sebastian is not here today, therefore let me please introduce our speakers. Our first speaker is Professor Yulia Nikitina. Yulia Nikitina is associated professor in the World Department and senior research fellow at the Center for Eurasian Studies of MGIMO University. MGIMO means Moscow State Institute of International Relations in Moscow, Russia. She is on the leave of absence until October of 2025. And she is a specialist in security politics in Eurasia with focus on regional organization and Russian approach to conflict resolution. Yulia also is co-authored with RAND Corporation report getting out from in between perspective on the regional order in post-Soviet Europe and Eurasia 2018, and she has contributed to the edited volume European Russian Power Relations in Turbulent Time 2021. Our second speaker is Alexander Iskandaryan. Alexander Iskandaryan is a prominent expert on politics, nationalism, and contemporary history of Armenia, South Caucasus, and Eurasia. He is also a political scientist and a director of the Caucasus Institute in Yerevan, Armenia. He has authored numerous works on these topics and presented numerous papers and has spoken at numerous conferences. Another speaker is Ahmad Alili. He is a researcher on international public policy and regional security in the South Caucasus and of EU partnership countries and neighboring regional powers. He is a part of several peace-building initiatives supported by European Union, United Nations, and NATO Partnership for Peace Consortium. He is currently a director of the Caucasus Policy Analysis Center, CPAC, a Baku-based independent think tank which promotes regional integration in the South Caucasus. Anar is also a lecturer at the Academy of Public Administration in Baku. He is lecturing on the role of non-state actors in the regional security, geopolitics, public management, and good government. And finally, my name is Mikhail Mamedov. I am a PhD graduate from History Department of Georgetown University. I also earned my master's degree from George Washington University and diploma in history from Moscow State University. And the reason why I got interested in this project, in organizing this series events on Armenia-Azerbaijan, my family arrived to the United States as political refugees from Baku back in 1996. Because I came from a mixed family. My father was Azerbaijani man, my mom was Armenian woman, and I published quite a few articles on a history of the Caucasus and on Armenia-Azerbaijani conflict, mostly from literature. Okay, let's start. Let's go to our event. I would like to ask each speaker to present, like, give 3-4 minutes presentation on how do you see this problem from on your side. How do you see these problems, like fading? In my opinion, it's waning Russia's influence in the South Caucasus, in Armenia and Azerbaijan. And then we will discuss all these issues which are marked in this flyer. Okay, I would like to start with Yulia, please. You're muted.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mikhail, for the introduction. Indeed, I should mention that I'm on leave, so I do not represent the opinion of my university. That's just my personal opinion on the matter. And I will also use the terminology like Nagorno-Karabakh because that's the official Russian discourse, which uses also this terminology in order to describe the political entity which existed on the territory of Azerbaijan until September 2023. Well, we're talking today about Russian influence in the region. I will make a couple of points on Russian-Armenian relations, first of all. Armenia perceived Russian stance towards Nagorno-Karabakh as a liability, so that Russia owes security guarantees to Armenia. While for Russia, Nagorno-Karabakh was more an asset. So Russia could get a better position in South Caucasus regarding security. Armenia was a member and is still a member of the Collective Security Treaty Organization. Russia led the military bloc. Armenia entered the Eurasian Economic Union instead of trying to increase its cooperation with the European Union within the Eastern Partnership program. That's the first difference in perceptions. And the second difference in perceptions that I would like to mention for the first round of discussions is that for Russia, Russian mission was not to let Armenia lose, but the Armenian expectations were that Russia should help Armenia win. And these are two different missions. And thus, we have this current crisis in relations between Russia and Armenia. And I will talk more about it in our further rounds of discussions. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Yulia. Okay, next. Maybe I can go to Alexander, and then we will go to Ahmad.
Thank you, Mikhail. I would say that South Caucasus, by its composition, is like one triangle inside another bigger triangle. The little triangle is Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan, three comparatively small countries of South Caucasus. I'm talking about recognized or widely recognized countries. And around that, around these three countries, you have another triangle with three global powers, or maybe not global, okay, regional powers, regional superpowers. Turkey, Iran, and Russia. And all of these three countries, three regional powers are formal empires. All of these three countries in their history controlled all South Caucasus, or at least part of South Caucasus. I mean, Ottoman Empire, Persian Empire, and Russian Empire. All of these countries have kind of atavisms connected with their imperial role in that region. Now it is changing. Sure, I would agree with Yulia if just to talk about Armenian-Russian relationships. Armenia still is member of CSTO. Armenia is a member of Eurasian Economic Union, and Armenia and Azerbaijan, by the way, are members of
Commonwealth of Independent States.
Yeah, independent states. But if you look at this not in statics, but in dynamics, you would see that maybe Russia is bigger or one of the biggest internal players in the region. But Russian impact is only impact which is decreasing on the region, I mean, on South Caucasus, decreasing, not vice versa. Especially after first Karabakh War, I mean Second Karabakh War. First after Second Karabakh War, second after beginning of Ukrainian War. When Russia is busy much more than in South Caucasus. And third, deportation of Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh. Russia, I would say, lost an instrument to have impact on both countries, Armenia and Azerbaijan. Because the reason of these countries was security. And Russia was at least pretended before Second Karabakh War to be a provider of security for the region, even I would say monopolist on security in the region, and it lost it. Russians, after Second Karabakh War, they signed, the president of Russian Federation with president of Azerbaijan and Prime Minister Armenia signed a paper. It was a paper. It was a treaty. And Russian peacekeepers were there around Nagorno-Karabakh, and their role there was to guarantee at least physical conditions for people, Armenians, ethnic Armenians, to live there and to provide this security. It failed. It failed. Russia couldn't or didn't want it, the same thing in politics very often, to do that. And now Russia is a country which doesn't have this role. At least this role is decreasing. Several days ago, last Russian soldiers left Azerbaijan. I would say that Russian soldiers, border guards, which were in that part of Armenia, which is on the border with Azerbaijan, now they are leaving from that places. So Russia lost an instrument, a tool to have their role in the region, and it is less now as it was, let's say, a year ago. So if you look not in statics but in dynamics, you see the process of less and less Russia in the region. All other forces, I mean, not domestic, internal forces, actors, they are, maybe their impact could be less than Russian, but it is, you can see that you have more and more Europe in the Caucasus, more and more Turkey in the Caucasus, maybe more and more Iran in the Caucasus, United States in the Caucasus, and less Russia. This is, if you look in dynamics, you see picture which is different from the static picture.
Okay.
Maybe it's up here.
Thank you. Okay, Ahmad, what is your position on this problem, on this issue?
Thank you very much. It's always nice to see you all, and I believe that this become a tradition to host and discuss these issues. It's a great pleasure. So I hope that this tradition continues. But at the same time, allow me to be a bit intellectual, a bit slightly provoking, right? So the ideas that was shared, like I kind of like to know about those ideas. I have read several articles, but I believe my thesis, the argument that I was saying several months ago in this platform, exactly, I believe that still stands true. Yes, globally Russia might lose, but South Caucasus becomes more and more important for Russia. And I don't think that this is there is the science of Russia leaving South Caucasus. That's not obvious yet. If we are talking about the Russian troops leaving Karabakh, yes, that's a sign. That might be considered a sign, but I believe that that's more reformatting its presence in the South Caucasus than leaving the region. At the same time, we see that the demonstrations in Georgia, the demonstrations in Armenia, so it kind of like that shows that the view that's happening, it's more complex. So that's why we have to take into account all of these developments before we state that there is some developments like they argue that what is the new, let's say, direction of these developments. I believe that Russia reformatting its presence in the South Caucasus. And in this reformatting, in this vision, I kind of see that Russia leaves more space to Turkey and Azerbaijan. I would say that if we are taking Russian troops leaving Karabakh as a sign of Russian weakening in the region, I would say that if there was not Russian troops wouldn't leave in November 2025, that would mean that Azerbaijan will have to increase the presence of the Turkish forces in the shores of the Caspian Sea. So that would be, so choosing between letting Turkey and the NATO forces to increase their presence in the South Caucasus, or taking the troops out of Karabakh, so creating a natural space. I believe in this context, Russia opted for the option when it's the natural and nobody takes over the region. So it's kind of like that. But in reality, we see that the economic dependence of Russia from Turkey, from Iran, from Middle Eastern countries, from India, that increasing. And in this context, the only way to reach these places is through South Caucasus, through Azerbaijan. So that's why I believe that now we are seeing emergence of the new format, new presence of Russian thinking for the South Caucasus. And I believe that that's in the process also. So I wouldn't say that that's something done, that's completed process. This is something that's happening now, and it can take different directions. So that's why I believe that we will have a few months ahead to see what's happening and then make a final verdict on the issue. So I will stop here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ahmed. Thank you. Okay, I would like to go back to Yulia and ask you something else. Do you think that there are certain changes in Russian foreign policy? And I can even quote something. For example, I think things changed dramatically since, for example, in October of 2013, Colonel Andrei Ruzinsky, head of the 102nd military base stationed in Armenia, he said in his interview with Krasnaya Zvezda that the Russian military might get involved in the conflict if the situation is escalated. He said that in 2020, in October of 2013, or 11 years ago. At the same time, approximately at the same time, the press secretary, the former press secretary of Ministry of Defense of Russia, retired Colonel Viktor Bronets, told in his interview to Komsomolskaya Pravda that Russia considers Nagorno-Karabakh, I don't quite agree with him, he said Nagorno-Karabakh is disputed territory, and even though that NKO is not a part of Armenia, of course, but the jure part of Azerbaijan, in case of aggression and war, Russia, as he said, and CSTO would interfere. And this quote, this information I took from Wiki Novosti and February 19, 2014. So it's 10 years ago. And it also brings to mind the statement which Evgeny Shaposhnikov made nearly 30 years ago more than 30 years ago, almost 35 years ago, in February of 1991, that that in case of Turkish involvement into the affairs of the South Caucasus, Turkish involvement into the affairs of South Caucasus would lead to the Third World War. Do you think that there are certain changes in Russia's foreign policy and Russia changed her foreign policy substantially? What do you think, Yulia? Can you
Yeah,
clarify
thank
this?
you. Yes, thank you for bringing up all those quotations. That's quite interesting because I'm not sure I would describe the Russian foreign policy with the opinion of those respected people that you quoted, because military people, they have to follow the political orders. So I understand this first quotation is, okay, if there is a political order, technically, militarily, we have enough resources to do that. We have the legal agreements between Russia and Armenia if the decision is taken. But we know that the Collective Security Treaty Organization has done everything not to take such a decision to get involved into the Armenian Azerbaijani territorial disputes on the border of the two countries, not in Nagorno-Karabakh, but concerning the borders of Armenia and Azerbaijan. And on the second quotation, so that's quite a specific retired military whose opinion does not always reflect the official position. So I'm not sure that some 10, 15 years ago, or even 30 years ago, Russia was really ready to get involved into military actions around Nagorno-Karabakh. My understanding is that, okay, rhetorically, it could have been the case to reassure Armenia that Russia will be supportive in case if something happens. But politically speaking, Russia has been always trying to keep the balance between the two South Caucasus countries, Armenia and Azerbaijan. And I don't see drastic changes in Russian motivations or Russian foreign policy. I see changes in the resources that Russia has to act in the region. I see changes in the geopolitical context, but not in the content of Russian foreign policy in South Caucasus. So I think there would be a special question about Russian peacekeepers, or I can talk about them now. So what would you prefer? To leave it to a later discussion, Mikhail, or should I comment on peacekeepers?
Very briefly, if you can say something about Russia.
Yeah, on peacekeepers. So I remember.
Alexander mentioned them. Yes.
Yeah, because I remember the discussions about peacekeepers 2 years ago, and already then most of the experts were saying that probably Azerbaijan will not let Russian peacekeepers stay until 2025, regardless of all potential scenarios. So not that this situation was totally excluded from the expert analysis. So Russia does not put a lot of emphasis on the situation with the peacekeepers. For Russia, it was quite a technical mission, not political one, but technical, humanitarian, and according to the Russian officials, this mission was quite successful. So again, if needed, I can comment on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Yulia. Now, Ahmad, what do you think? Do you think you see certain changes in Russia's foreign policy? What do you think? Because there are certain conspiracy theories that claim that Russia needed Karabakh in order to pressure both South Caucasus countries into submission, use them in order to manage them, in order to pressure both of them. That's what Karabakh was used by Russians. Do you agree with this?
I do not see Ahmad actually.
Ahmad.
Kind of disappeared from the conference.
Ahmad.
Here.
I don't see him.
Me too.
Okay. Okay, I hope he will be back. Okay, maybe question to Alexander. So, Alexander, do you think that we see certain changes in Russia's foreign policy? Do you think that Russia changed its foreign policy from Russia is always considered, if you read any articles, any newspapers published in the United States, published in Europe, if you read them, you can always see this. Russia is abandoning her traditional ally Armenian in favor of more pragmatic support of Azerbaijan and Turkey because of certain changes in this political situation in Europe, in Eastern Europe, because of the war with Ukraine. Do you agree with this?
Maybe not in that terms, but as for changing, absolutely yes.
Yes.
Everything is changing around Russia. Everything is changing in Russian foreign policy. Everything is changing in Russian I would say, influence in post-Soviet space. And the reason of all this is the war in Ukraine.
Yes.
And this changed dramatically. For example, Yulia said, and I would agree with her, that Russia never had plans to use military force directly in the region, in the conflict between Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Nagorno-Karabakh around it. Yes, but I would add,
Yes.
they didn't need it. They could stop any problem, any escalation in the South Caucasus with telephone call.
Mm-hmm.
And they did it, and not one time. Now they didn't have this opportunity. It's not about reading articles. It's about looking at resources. It was the beginning of discussion was extremely interesting, and it was our discussion. I mean, it was brilliant. It brilliantly shows what we are talking about, because generally all three of us, we agreed. Yulia said that formally Russian politics is Russian politics. I said formally yes, but it has a dynamic, and it decreases Russian influence on Armenia and Azerbaijan. And Ahmed said that yes, and we can call this decreasing reformating diplomatic necessities. That's it. I wouldn't think that Russian troops would go out of Nagorno-Karabakh, Lachin, etc., if not February 22. I wouldn't say that it would be possible to let them out, and so I would say rapidly, so sometimes brutally. Some Russian officers were killed in time of this. Yes, in 23. I wouldn't say that blockade of Lachin corridor would be possible if not Ukrainian war, etc. Sure, it's changing. I wouldn't say that this deal about Turks or Russians in Azerbaijan would be possible, let's say 5 years ago or even 10 years ago, etc. So this is a process. We can see it, and the answer is yes, yes, Mikhail. I agree with this, with the thesis that it is changing, and it is changing dramatically. I would say. Your question, I mean.
Okay, thank you, Alexander. Now, Ahmad, I actually wanted to ask this question you, but you disappeared. There is
Not intentionally, so apologies. Yeah.
No problem. Yes, please. So, what do you think? Is Russia's policy? Is Russian? You said that Russia reformating its policy, but don't you think? My also question was: there is an opinion that Karabakh was a tool for Russia to pressure both republics into submission, or at least into its sphere of influence. Would you agree with this point of view? And do you think that Russia's policy is still changing?
I would say each conflict, like that's a good tool to use it by the like the two Armenia-Azerbaijan, when they do that, things that outsiders don't like, they can use it to push that. So Russia was, since the 1990s, I believe that it was very first to be there, and it was a tool. But at the same time, I would say that now the situation that develops in a direction that Azerbaijan neutrality is
Azerbaijan
like
is what? I'm sorry.
Neutrality
Neutrality. Okay.
or balanced foreign policy, like the yeah. So I believe that, and that becomes much more important. And we saw what happened in 1950s in Finland, in Austria, that Soviet Union withdraw, leaving these countries as a natural places to be in between, right? And these countries, they had certain historical roles. And I believe that nowadays we kind of like how Azerbaijan, with the Finland joining NATO, etc., we have new countries emerging with the very similar functions. That the military bases are withdrawing, but instead Russia gains assurance that this state is going to be neutral ground, and it can do cooperation with everyone. So that is why I believe, and this is what I call reformatting its presence in the region. So that's why, yes, it was a tool, it lost it, but it gained other tools, complete different, I would say, relations with Azerbaijan, which opens a complete different relations to the Middle East. So that is why we are seeing a complete new situation right now. So that is why, where is the winning, where is the losing in this game? It's still not apparent, frankly speaking. So that's why, but we have to wait a bit to understand fully the picture. And my friend yesterday, he was so fast commenting about the Iranian president's helicopter being downed, yes. But everyone around him advised him not to comment on this issue. Give it at least 2 days just to understand what happened, then comment on the issue, right? Yes. So there are certain developments that even a month is not enough. You have to let some time just to understand what happened in this direction. But we are definitely seeing that Russia is reformatting its presence in the South Caucasus.
Yes, that's good. Okay. I wanted to ask you a different question, actually. Well, there was a question on the agenda. We don't have much time, but still. Do you think that, well, I mean, obviously, for me, it's obvious, of course. Do you think that this, hold on. Well, okay, let's go to what factors do you think contributed to this inefficiency of Russian forces in Karabakh? What do you think? But they were pretty inefficient. They were not able to be between Armenians and Azerbaijanis. What happened to them? Why they were so inefficient, in your opinion?
Well, I believe that what happened, I told when I was answering the very first question that
yes,
if Russian troops, they wouldn't leave in November 2025, that would mean that Azerbaijan should increase the presence of the Turkish forces.
What makes you think so?
that was like if like the so the question was that if there is the deadline is there and the Russian troops didn't leave Karabakh, what you are going to do, right? So I believe that was the one of the
But
exit strategies.
Azerbaijan in Karabakh, Azerbaijan had about 20,000 people, 20,000 military versus 2,000 Russians.
No, I don't think that anybody was like were willing to use forces against each other. So it was like just
Manpower.
like yeah, but signaling that certain change in the mood, that sometimes that's more powerful, right? So that's why that was clear since the beginning, right? So but that was clear. But your question, like calling like efficient, I would say that everything started with the Russia and Armenia signing the mandate for the Russian troops in Karabakh, but Azerbaijan not signing.
They didn't. The Azerbaijan didn't sign this.
Yes, Azerbaijan didn't sign it because
Did they sign it?
no, Azerbaijan didn't sign that mandate for
Okay.
those forces. Yeah, well, because Azerbaijan was saying that Armenia has nothing to do with Russian troops in territory of Azerbaijan. So if there is any mandate signed, it should be between Russia and Azerbaijan. Russians and Armenians didn't agree with that. So that's why Azerbaijan didn't sign it. So that was a basically gentleman agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And the second issue, and I believe that it would be, the things would happen in a bit different way. If in November 2020, Azerbaijan didn't feel that it was betrayed, because the way how Russian troops entered there, that was, the agreement was that Turkey and Russia, basically, they are going to have equal stand, but taking into account the certain historical sensitivities. Turkish soldiers' boots are not going to be present in Karabakh. It's going to be only Russian soldiers' boots on the ground. But what happened in November and December 2020? Like basically Russian-Turkish monitoring center never functioned. All the statements they were made from the Russian MOD. So it was like the overtaking there was agreement, and it was Azerbaijan felt that it was betrayed by that. So that was changed. So not signing a mandate, and then Azerbaijan kind of feeling that it's not the fair, the play is not happening on a fair terms in Karabakh. That kind of create a lot of resistance within Azerbaijan, and that gradually led to other factors. So the beginning of the whole thing, not signing the mandate, and what happened in November and December 2020, they caused the events that followed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Yulia, what do you think about this? What was the
Yeah,
weakness?
well, first, like, can you give me some examples of conflicts where peacekeepers really managed to settle the conflict? Usually, the role of peacekeepers is just to keep the sides apart. And like, if we are talking about the efficiency of Russian peacekeepers, what are we talking about? The fact that they didn't stop Azerbaijan from taking the territory back.
I'm
Well,
sorry,
but was it really the mission of the peacekeepers?
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. In 2008, after when Russian peacekeepers were in, I believe, in Georgia, in Abkhazia, and South Ossetia, after Georgians shot at them, Russia simply not annexed, they acknowledged in the Abkhazia.
Independent, yes. But
that was a role of peacekeepers. I don't think that was a good idea to support, to acknowledge independence of Abkhazia and South Ossetia. I know that it was a response to recognition of Kosovo, but still. I
don't think they were called peacekeepers. Russian forces, I mean, the classical meaning of peacekeeping is quite different. If we are talking about the UN peacekeeping, Okay, it's not about terminology now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the role of Russian peacekeepers on the ground was to protect Armenians, and as Ahmad mentioned, like that was the only political mission, because Azerbaijan didn't sign the mandate. So what else could have they been doing there? And for that reason, from the perspective of Russian officials, I will say it again, this mission was quite efficient. You would find numerous declarations by Russian MFA or MOD about the humanitarian assistance provided by the peacekeepers, about infrastructure, about something else. I would not overestimate the role of peacekeepers in this whole crisis and conflict in general. At least for Russia, that was not the key factor of the conflict settlement. For Russia, the key was the so-called gentleman agreement. So Ahmad mentioned gentleman agreements about the presence of peacekeepers, and you would also find in Lavrov's interviews that the agreement signed between the three leaders of Russia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan in 2020 was also a kind of a gentleman agreement, because the status of Nagorno-Karabakh, the discussions about the status were postponed, according to Lavrov. So which gave Armenia a kind of opportunity to come back to it later, probably, and peacekeepers on the ground had to assure the postponement of the solution. Yeah, so that's how Russia views the situation. So again, nothing dramatic from the Russian perspective.
Okay, thank you. And Alexander, can you comment on this, please?
I wouldn't say that this agreement was very gentleman. I wouldn't say that Azerbaijanis were happy with Russian peacekeepers inside. Having a Russian forces there by agreement, which was signed by two presidents and prime minister, the agreement did not ratified by parliament. Parliament didn't vote for that, but it was signed by three leaders. Did not ratify. Sorry, I couldn't find the word. And by this agreement, they would be there till 25. With prolongation, if nobody wouldn't be against that. What changed? Ukrainian war.
Yes.
It's peacekeepers never ever is not about weapon and is not about military force. There were approximately about 2,000 soldiers, 1,960, with Kalashnikovs. Around them, they have from 30 to 40,000 Azerbaijani army with everything, from, I don't know, helicopters to tanks, from rockets to everything. It's not about force. It's not about military force. Peacekeepers are about flag. Flag of global power, Russian Federation, a member of General Assembly of UN, nuclear power, great country, which is at the border with Azerbaijan, etc., etc., etc. The flag of Russian Federation a bit changed after the beginning of Ukrainian war. So the answer to the question why Azerbaijanis could do that, could withdraw Russians from Azerbaijan, the answer is very simple. because they could.
Yes.
That wasn't their idea from the beginning. They were not very happy with them from the beginning. So if they would be able, I was one of that experts which talked about that just before, which Yuna said about, and wrote and told it many times. If they would be able to do that in 21, they would do it in 21. If they would be able to do it in 27, they would do it in 27. If they would be able not to do it till, I don't know, 2040, they wouldn't do it. It's not about paper signing. It's about the size, if I could say that of flag. And this size changed after beginning of Ukrainian war, and that brought the situation when they had to go someday. They did it in 23. Okay, it could be in 24 or 25, but the idea, they weren't functional there. They couldn't do their function. They couldn't do it. They couldn't open borders. They couldn't to bring security for people who go there. They had to do it by paper. So it's about role of it's about not role, the size of Russian influence outside Russia, not about formal things.
Okay, thank you. I guess now we should start picking up questions from the floor. I'm afraid I know. Okay, now I guess I know how to do it. I guess I see them. Okay, what are these questions? Thank you for discussion. Okay. Upstairs move. Dear speakers, thank you for your insightful comments. I'm wondering, my gosh, I can't see it.
I think everybody can read the questions.
You can read
because
them?
It's available
Okay.
to everyone,
Okay,
including
what about the second
yes.
question? Do you read it?
Yeah.
Dear
Yeah,
speakers,
we see
thank
all of
you
them
for
in the
your
chat.
insights. I was wondering, how can you think, what do you think the engagement of Baku and Astana thought the Transcaucasian corridor impacts the geopolitics in the region, and how this plays on for Russia? Thank you. So what do you think about this?
It's maybe for Ahmed.
Yes, Ahmed.
Well, actually, that's the only question that I'm missing because of the technical problems. My Zoom got shut up, so that's why. But if it is Astana format, I hope. My opinion is that all the recent meetings, they took place in bilateral format, but in German.
No, Ahmed. I'm sorry. The question is about Trans-Caspian corridor.
Trans-Caspian corridor, yes.
Engagement of Baku and Astana through the Trans-Caspian corridor.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yes.
No, you haven't seen it, so I just read it.
Like the Azerbaijan. Thank you very much for reading. Yes, I missed the question. Yes. Yes, the issue is that now Azerbaijan geographical position that kind of creates quite many interesting moments, I would say, right? So that is why turning your territory in the area of cooperation, that's something that can save Azerbaijan, because the geopolitical tensions which happening around Azerbaijan right now, it's quite big. So the only way of saving your sovereignty, independence, it's to cooperate with everyone, basically. So that's why these two lines, south-north transport corridor and the east-west transport corridor, they both are passing over Azerbaijan. And the very first one is going to connect Russia to Iran and to India. The second one is going to connect Southern Europe to Western China, right? So in this context, I believe that Azerbaijan is willing to be open for all these opportunities, and it's going to help Azerbaijan to raise some, let's say, Azerbaijan is definitely going to benefit economically from this project. So that's why in this issue, the cooperation with the South, with other South Caucasus nations, with the Central Asian nations, it's very important. And I believe that this is a way forward. And frankly speaking, I told in our last meetings also that now Azerbaijan is in soul searching. It looks for a new directions, because Azerbaijan foreign policy, it kind of feels its duties, its mission accomplished with the 2020 Karabakh War, right? So now Azerbaijan is looking for the new horizons for its foreign policy. So Central Asian cooperation with the Central Asian nations, the Trans-Caspian logistical chains, pipelines. It's quite a significant moment for Azerbaijan's for the future of Azerbaijan's foreign policy. I hope I could answer that question.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I have some more general
Yes,
comments,
yes.
if I may, because out of all those questions in the chat, I'm not sure that I can really answer any of them directly. As to these discussions about Russian military base or Russian
It's the next
border
question.
guards.
Next
Okay, so
question.
now you're talking only about Trans-Caucasian corridor. Then generally Russia is interested in all infrastructure project, and we know that Russia is promoting the 3+3 project 3+3 format of Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, plus Russia, Turkey, and Iran, and that's about infrastructure as well. So I think that, of course, when we are talking about specific transport hubs or specific infrastructure when it comes to the interests of transnational companies or state-owned companies, of course, there are a lot of problems that we will not hear about because they are kind of underwater and they're business problems. But politically speaking, regional infrastructure is something that Russia views as a way towards uniting this region on a regional basis. So Russian officials very often mention the formula regional solutions for regional problems. Thus, generally politically on the surface, everything looks fine for Russia as long as it concerns only regional actors.
Okay, thank you. I guess the next question was about what about Russian peacekeepers in Armenia? Well, there are no peacekeepers in Armenia. There are Russian base in Armenia, 102nd military base. Alexander, would you like to comment on this? On about military base in Armenia?
You say the same way which you said. We don't have peacekeepers.
Yeah, exactly.
On
It's
the
a
border with
military base.
on the former border of Soviet Union, i.e. the border of Armenia with Iran and Turkey, we still have Russian border guards. They are not peacekeepers, they're border guards. There is an agreement and they are there with Armenian border guards as well. Just one exclusion, they are still are in the Yerevan International Airport called Zvartnots. You have a couple of Russian border guards there, just several persons now, and they will leave that airport in August 1st by agreement between Armenia and Russia, and border guards of at the borders with Iran and Turkey. They will stay there. It was said by Putin when Putin met with Pashinyan in May several days, 10 days ago. How long they're going to stay, I don't know. It depends of all situation around this, including all changes in Russian-Western relationships, in Armenian-European Union relationships, in Ukraine, etc., etc. So very hard to say. As for Russian military base, this another question is maybe for me as well. Military base in Armenia following the departure of Russian border guards from the Yerevan airport. Are there discussions about Russia closing its military base? Discussions, yes, you have discussions about everything. As for reality, first, you cannot do it legally, because by agreement, they will stay there till 2044, and to close it, to reject it, you cannot do it alone. Just Russia, or by agreement, just Russia or just Armenia cannot change the agreement till 2044. So it could be just if both countries would agree on that. The procedure is not clear how it should done. By agreement, they would be there by 2044. Politically speaking, I would repeat, I don't know. Till 44, you have 20 years, and what is going to be this 20 years, how it's going to develop. It would be too much to say about what's going to be. As for Russian bodyguards on the border with Iran. With Iran, because I said with Iran, not with Turkey, because Turkish-Armenian border is closed.
Yes, of course.
Doesn't really work as normal border. You don't have checkpoints there. You cannot cross it. You don't have roads open there, so it's closed. As for Iranian border, it's not like that. It's open. You have people go there and goods and everything. Theoretically, you can imagine changing of the format of Russian border guard there, but nothing concrete. I don't think that in short or middle period it can change dramatically. So more or less, maybe they will still be stay there.
Okay, thank you. No more comments on this issue from Ahmad, or
On which particular issue you want to comment?
about the Armenian base, Russian base in Armenia, Russian military base in Armenia. You don't have any.
I mean, the thing is, everybody paid attention to the fact that when Armenian PM Pashinyan met with Russian President Putin, and they say that Russian troops located in Armenia-Azerbaijan international border, they are going to leave their positions, right? And that they are going to leave their positions at Zvatnos airport. That was like one of the most commented side of the issue. But the second part of the statement was skipped somehow. The second part of the statement is that Russian troops are going to stay in international borders to protect Iran-Armenia border and Armenia-Turkey border. So I believe that part kind of like tells much more. So that's more than clear. So there is nothing to discuss. So that's why I don't think that anything can, like in the near future, Armenia will not be that strong economically and in other fields just to realize what it wants to realize. But also we have to mention that there are much more chances for Armenia to stabilize first internal situation, to turn the corner, then talk about these issues. Because now within Armenia, internally in Armenia, there are quite many developments are happening, and it's quite interesting to watch. What will be the consequences of those events? Then we can say that will Nikol Pashinyan have political will and resources to move forward with the asking Russian troops out of Armenia.
If I make one
Yes, absolutely.
interrelated idea, so on the presence of foreign forces on the territory of Armenia. So Ahmad mentioned, for example, the kind of potential balancing between Russian peacekeepers and Turkish NATO forces on the territory of Azerbaijan if like the September 2023 operation had not happened. But we have another example of balancing in Armenia. I think we have not mentioned today the EU mission in Armenia, because from the perspective of Russia, Russia is very much dissatisfied about Armenian decision to invite the EU mission instead of the Collective Security Treaty Organization border monitoring mission. So Russia perceives it exactly as a kind of an act of balancing. And the official explanations are that Armenia declined the already prepared decision to send the CS2 monitoring mission in order to invite the European Union, which acts in kind of a subversive manner towards Russian interests in the region. So I think we should take this into consideration as well when we're talking about the balance of power in the region in general.
Okay, there was a next question about what about upcoming. No, it's not upcoming. It's they already met in foreign ministers in Kazakhstan. What do you think? They met in Astana, if I'm not mistaken. What do you think? I guess Alexander commented about them, about this meeting already. What do you think? What does it mean, this meeting? Actually, I was planning to ask this question already. What do you think about this meeting? Was it also a sign of weakening of Russian position, or it's still a sign of strengthening? Because, you know, if they were wanted to meet at some neutral ground, they could have met at Tbilisi, but they met in Kazakhstan. Alexander.
I don't think in principle that place of meeting or country which help with organization of meeting is important. Usually what they call meetings in Brussels, in Moscow, in Washington, etc. All these meetings in reality were just meeting of two sides. Usually it was like that. They were coming to this or that city or town, I don't know, capital, and their negotiations were usually between Aliyev and Pashinyan, or ministers of foreign affairs, not with others in the room. The problem is, I'm sorry for that kind of expression. The problem is that you cannot call it already Karabakhi problem, because Karabakh is not exist physically. People are not Karabakhans, I mean ethnic Armenians are not there. They are refugees, so they are not there. So Karabakh as a subject is not exist. You can call it maybe Armenian-Azerbaijani conflict. And the problem is positions of sides. They are too far from each other. You don't have still very strong field for negotiations. The view on conflict is so far from Armenian view and Azerbaijani view, very far from each other. What they call peace or peace agreement are different things from Armenian view and from Azerbaijani view. So I don't think that meeting in Astana or meeting in Brussels or meeting, I don't know, in Zimbabwe would help to resolve the conflict if the sides of conflict still are not able to do that. So no, I don't think that it is very important. I would say that this is good that you have more places and more formats. And if you would have the fourth one, the fifth one, the I don't know, sixth one, it would be good, because to have negotiations in every possibility, would it be in the West, in Russia, in post-Soviet country, not post-Soviet, that's good. You should have as more places or possibilities or formats you can, but I don't think that it is a real contradiction is where is it, in Brussels or in Astana or in Moscow. The problem is here I mean in South Caucasus, between Armenians and Azerbaijanis. The problem is in Baku and in Yerevan, or in between of them. So that's it. So even if you tomorrow would organize meeting at the moon, it would not bring to the result just because it's
in the moon. Okay, thank you. Yulia, do you think what do you think about this meeting in Astana? Was it a sign? Do you think it's a weakening of Russian influence in this region, or you think it's still something? Because if it was, if the summit was held somewhere in, I don't know, in Georgia or in one of the Baltic countries, it would mean probably that. Do you agree with Alexander that the place where this meetings taking place is not relevant?
Well, generally, I agree that for Russia, it doesn't matter that much, and this meeting is not viewed as something very important in the long-term process of conflict settlement. So Kazakhstan also tries to underline that they're just providing the platform, the place for negotiations, and they're not trying to take Russian role of mediator in the conflict from Russia. Generally, well, I agree that it's all up to the parties to the conflict to see how they can come to an agreement. If we take Russian official comments, Lavrov once mentioned that okay, we're not against different negotiations formats. Let Armenia and Azerbaijan try other platforms. We're not against it because anyway, Russia has all the keys to the delimitation and demarcation process, because we in Russia are the only ones who have the Soviet time maps concerning the territorial dispute. So that's the official Russian position, that okay, do whatever you do, but anyway, we have the key expertise in the area you can't do without Russia. So that's the Russian view on that, at least on the process of demarcation and delimitation, and also on the general issues of corridors or economic issues. Again, Russian position is that the agreement signed in 2020 are still in place, and if Armenia and Azerbaijan want to continue following the signed agreement, then okay, Russia will gladly contribute to this process. So that's the position.
Okay, thank you. And you, Ahmad, what do you think?
I believe, yeah, well, both Alexander and Yulia mentioned, I believe that I can share their opinions, just with the one addition that the process is bilateral, and it doesn't matter where the meetings are taking place. But if we see the developments in Kazakhstan as the meeting taking place in non-European and non-American platform, So
Yeah.
that's definitely, we can say that it's kind of like the we can interpret it in favor of Russia, but from Azerbaijan perspective, it also can be being balanced in this issue also. But at the same time, I would say that we see quite a strong, let's say, quite intensive US-Azerbaijan diplomatic negotiations, visits. The presidential aide, Hikmet Hacıyev, he was in Washington very recently. So let's see how it will shape the negotiation process in the future. But in general, we have to take into account that all the events that are taking place, it's a bilateral format. So it doesn't matter where you are meeting. The host can greet you, but then you are going to stay face to face. Yeah, so it's a bilateral format. So that's why in this context, I believe it doesn't matter where you meet.
Okay, thank you. We have less than 4 minutes. Very briefly, is there any end at the end? Is there any light at the end of the tunnel for these two people, for both of our people? Let's start with you, with Ahmad.
So which people?
For both our nations,
societies.
is there any light at the end of the tunnel?
Yes, I believe what Prime Minister Pashinyan said recently, that it's ready to sign deal before November, right? So it's definitely a positive sign. And in Baku, the mood is that how to bring even civil society reps to COP29. So in Baku, the discussions about Armenian official delegation visiting Baku, I don't think let's say it seems problematic. So it's kind of like in Baku, the feeling is that they are going to be there. But what about bringing more civil society reps to the meeting? So that's the thing that we are discussing here, and I hope that that's going to be realized also.
Okay, thank you. And Yulia, what do you think? Do you think that these two nations would be able to finally to settle and live with each other in peace?
Well, theoretically speaking, like from the perspective of different conflict theories, of course, that's possible, but that should rely on reconciliation processes, which are very long-term and costly and require the societies to be fully involved in the process of reconciliation. When it comes to geopolitics, great powers, and so on, I think that that would be something positive for the societies. Now I think that Russia may be too much relying on geopolitics, forgetting about soft power. The EU and the US are too much relying on soft power, normative power, Europe, rule of law, forgetting about geopolitics sometimes. While people on the ground need economic prosperity, and it's up to regional economic organizations to provide economic prosperity. So I think that more regional cooperation would be beneficial, or even competition of different regional organizations, suggesting to South Caucasus countries more opportunities concerning trade or infrastructure would be beneficial for the societies, even if the political agreements are not reached yet.
Okay, thank you. And you, Alexander?
I'm not so optimistic as Ahmed. I wouldn't believe really that something will be signed till November. And even if I'm mistaken and something will be signed, I don't believe that peace agreement and peace are same thing. So you have a lot of peace agreements all over the world. But generally speaking, I would agree. You don't have in the history of manhood conflicts which are forever.
Yes.
Every conflict stopped someday. If this someday will come in 5 years or 500 years, I don't know. But the day will come. It will be sometimes the results of this conflict, the end of this conflict, could be terrible. as terrible as was end of Karabakh, of people who lived there in their homes. Sometimes it could be terrible, but generally speaking, yes, someday it will stop. I just cannot say you when. I don't believe that, as you as well, that it could be in coming months or even coming years. No, but the day will come.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. And we are out of time. We are over already. I want to thank everybody for participating in this discussion. Thank you to George Washington University for this wonderful opportunity to organize this roundtable. And I apologize to those people whose questions we were not able to answer. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.